This is the site of the second proposal to come before Kelowna City Council for an apartment building with basically no parking made available to its future residents. How is this even possible? We asked the people at City Hall. And we're joined by Nola Kilmartin at the City of Kelowna's Planning Department. People are saying, how could you possibly bring a proposal forward for an apartment complex with zero parking for residents? How is that even possible?
We've only received an application, so it hasn't gone through processing yet, but the application in Rutland is in the transit-oriented area that is designated by the province. So some bills came out last year, Bill 47 being the one related to transit-oriented areas. So this applies in Pandosy, Okanagan College, and Rutland as well.
Right. So it sort of fits the guidelines to put forward a proposal with no parking for the residents. And this is a provincial thing. It's not like the City of Kelowna came up with that sort of framework.
That is correct.
So if members of council said, oh, well, hang on, some of these people are going to need to park a car somewhere, we're going to reject it. They wouldn't have that luxury, right?
They don't have that as an option. They are able to make judgments on other variances that may be required, but the application just came in, so we haven't gone through that process yet with the applicant.
So that wouldn't be an acceptable reason to vote against moving it forward?
No, we wouldn't be able to go against the provincial legislation on that.
So what's the rationale? I guess it's possible now to fully populate an apartment building with people who aren't relying on cars the way we have for generations?
Well, what I understand is this is a 13-unit application, and there would be 2 commercial units on the ground floor. So it's in a very highly accessible area. There are plenty of bus routes and active transportation corridors around. I think people have different options to use, like Uber, taxis, other car share programs come available. And as the city grows and evolves, those things will become more convenient. Whereas, people moving here perhaps from larger communities or on a tighter budget, they just don't have the funds to spend on a vehicle.
Right. I guess it's kind of like the future is here when it comes to people considering a life that's not so automobile dependent.
Yeah, it never is going to line up perfectly. All cities go through these kinds of growing pains. Vancouver did 25, 30 years ago, and Kelowna is a desirable place to live. But every person who moves here isn't going to be moving here with multiple vehicles. And as people move into new buildings, whether it's rental or a condo for purchase, they have to make an informed decision about where they are choosing to live. So the hope would be, the expectation would be, if you were moving into a building that has no parking available, you would self-select into or out of that building based on what your lifestyle and needs are.
And it does seem to me that the proposal wouldn't be coming forward if the developer didn't feel that there was a market for that.
That's correct. It's a risk to a developer to make the decision, and they have to make sure it works. Something the city is looking at, though, based on past reviews we've done and some of the data that's come in, a lot of complaints are generated in areas that don't have any on-street parking management, meaning there's no pay parking, there's no time-restricted parking, or there's no residential parking permit passes. So what we would be looking at, especially in these transit-oriented areas, because we don't have the ability to control or dictate what the parking requirements are in those areas. So our parking operations department is looking at expanding those parking management terms for on-street to help with that.
I think you might have gotten ahead of my next question, which was going to be, I would think that of the people that eventually move into a place like that, there's going to be a few that have a car, and I imagine they might just figure out some way to park it nearby. So is that the kind of thing that the city sort of expects and will sort of be looking at?
Yes, absolutely. So that would all encompass part of the on-street parking management. So some people may be able to apply to get a residential parking permit. Others may need to find an alternate solution for parking. Right. I mean, in this case, this project is 13 units. We just had a project receive support from council last week on Pandosy across from the hospital. And that development is geared towards healthcare workers from the hospital. And that had no residential parking either.
Right. So bottom line, this isn't because the city of Kelowna has lost its mind, because that's how some people are seen to be reacting to this.
Thanks for that question, Kent.
No, I mean, it comes from the province, and the idea is that people can imagine living in a place near a transportation corridor where there are buses, where there are bike lanes, and live it that way.
And walking. That location in Rutland's a great location to walk. And something else to consider, we're not the first ones doing this. There have been about 80 cities across North America that have started with parking reforms. Right. So either reducing what their parking minimums are, introducing parking maximums, and expanding tolls and other things like that to control how congested our cities are.
Right.
And how necessary driving is.
Right. And people who don't like the traffic jam should be happy that there's this many people are going to live here that aren't going to add as much to the traffic jams. Right?
Well said.
Yeah. Thanks for this.
Thank you.
And thanks for watching Kelowna Now.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.